My name is Genji Amino. I'm one of the curators, along with Christina Hiromi Hobbs, of No Monument in the Wake of the Japanese American Incarceration at the Noguchi Museum.
My name is Christina Hiromi Hobbs, and I'm a writer and a curator based here in New York. The exhibition marks the 80th anniversary of the issuance of Executive Order 9066, which effectively ordered the mass incarceration of over 120,000 Japanese Americans who were living on the West Coast. My grandparents and great-grandparents were incarcerated during the war, and as a descendant of the incarceration, I feel very directly connected to these histories.
Part of what brings me to this exhibition is a personal relationship with one of the artists, Leo Amino, who's my grandfather. Amino's work represents some of the art during the period of the incarceration coming out of the East Coast by artists who were not themselves incarcerated.
The title of the exhibition, No Monument in the Wake of the Japanese American Incarceration, refers both to the ways in which the history of the incarceration itself has not been remembered or memorialized for a broader American public, and also the ways in which Japanese American art has not been properly remembered within a broader art historical narrative.
Part of the ambition of No Monument is to take a look at the examples of art making produced in this period that were non-representational, that did not purport to create an authentic record or representation of a history of suffering.
The three artists that are featured in the first room of the exhibition all have immediate experience of incarceration.
Ruth Asawa, whose hanging copper wire sculpture is featured in our exhibition, was incarcerated as a teenager in Rower, Arkansas. For us, the importance of including her work has to do with the ways in which it resists any of the foundational assumptions around the relationship between sculpture and monumentalism.
The artist whose work is in the center of the room is the sculptor Isamu Noguchi, who was voluntarily incarcerated at Poston in Arizona. It offers itself both as a kind of entrance and also as a sort of barrier to understanding these histories that might otherwise be foreclosed to us. And as you walk around the piece itself, you begin to see that it's made from a thin sheet of steel and stands quite precariously. And then the final artist that's featured in this room is the photographer Toyo Miyatake. This was a period in which cameras themselves were considered a form of contraband for Japanese Americans. Toyo Miyatake managed to smuggle in a camera lens and a film holder into Manzanar, where he was incarcerated with his family. And he was able, with the help of a carpenter, to actually construct a camera. This image from the camps themselves, we have paired with a photograph on the right-hand side from 1925 entitled Evergreen Cemetery Tombstone, to ask questions about the relationship between reference and abstraction, and also between the history of the incarceration itself and the ways in which it has been memorialized.
On the small divider separating the two rooms, we've placed an image of Toyo Miyatake's, actually another image of the barracks at Manzanar. This image, however, we've placed in a recessed area such that it doesn't present itself immediately to the viewer, in a way spatializing the removal of this history from public access and public knowledge.
The first two photographs when you come into the space are both by the third generation Sansei photographer Patrick Nagatani. His parents and his grandparents were both incarcerated during the war, but he himself was actually born in the period following the war. Through the photographs of his that we've included in the exhibition, we're beginning to open up questions around the legacy of the incarceration and the ways in which the incarceration has been remembered.
We thought it would be compelling to include Isamu Noguchi's sculpture, Monument to Heroes, a sculpture which makes a claim to the status of a monument at the same time as it seems to call monumentalism itself into question. On the far wall of the main exhibition space, we've paired two Patrick Nagatani photographs which are quite different from the first set. These two photographs display landscapes which appear to hold no trace whatsoever of the concentration camps they formerly housed. For us, Patrick Nagatani's photographs of these empty landscapes pose a very difficult question regarding the ways in which the history of the incarceration have sometimes been suppressed and or obscured to the degree that one might not know where to begin in attempting to recover them.
On the far wall of the exhibition, we have three sculptures by artists who were not themselves incarcerated. On the left-hand side, we have a sculpture by the artist Toshiko Takaezu. It actually has enclosed inside of it a rattle. This potential for sounding and this idea around holding silence was something that we found very powerful in relation to histories of the incarceration, which have been kept silent. The next sculpture is by the artist Genji Amino, who was living in New York at the time.
I really love the work of my grandfathers that's included in our exhibition. The piece is essentially an enclosure made out of polyester resin, which was a material that was declassified immediately following the war in 1945. The work appears at once to be a kind of amber preservation of organic material from the past, and also the birth of a new form.
The third sculpture on this far wall is by the artist Joseph Godo, who witnessed Pearl Harbor, and in a later artist statement, he described Pearl Harbor as having a really significant impact on his life and also on his art.
The work that we see here appears almost an object of industry that has been decommissioned. On the third wall of the exhibition, we've arranged two prints by Toyo Miyatake from the same two periods that were seen in the first room. While these two photographs might appear to be formally, dramatically distinct, both of these images actually suspend a moment. Toyo Miyatake is working to imagine a future in a space of constraint, to take the given and transform it into a possibility that exceeds what is imaginable in that moment.
The work on this wall is all loaned from the Japanese American National Museum from their contested histories traveling exhibition of crafts that were made during the incarceration. We're not sure exactly who their makers are. We're not sure exactly which camps they came from or when they were made.
We want to take a history of artistic experiment in and through craft making and put it in conversation with a history of making that has never been considered in a fine art context in the works of incarcerees.
We've paired the works from the Japanese American National Museum with two photographs by Hiromi Kira made in the period prior in relation to this larger body of Japanese American pictorialist photography lost or destroyed as a result of the incarceration.
The ways in which all of the sculptures in the exhibition engage questions of transparency and opacity in relation to accessibility, in relation to that which is hidden and that which is revealed, is in a way summarized and brought full circle by Sekimachi's hanging sculpture. At turns more opaque and at turns more transparent, Sekimachi's sculpture provides a resting point for the eye and for the mind as we explore these questions of visibility and invisibility of both history and memory in this exhibition.